Are you sure, man?
Yeah, no,
All rise. Court's now in session. The Honorable Judges at the point. You may be seated, Your Honor. We're now going on the record in the state of Ohio versus Bobby Hernandez. Your Honor, this matter is set for sentencing.
Thank you. You may be seated. We are here in the case of State of Ohio versus Bobby Hernandez, and that is case number 600810. Mr. Hernandez is present in court this morning along with counsel. Counsel, you state your name for the record.
Attorney Ralph DeFranco on behalf of Mr. Hernandez, Your Honor.
Thank you. The interests of the state of Ohio are represented by the assistant county prosecutors. Would you please let me know, state your name for the record. All right, thank you. I have before me a state's motion to preserve victims' anonymity pursuant to local rule 37B. Counsel, are there witnesses here or people who do not want their likeness or they do not want to be filmed or videotaped or recorded?
Yes, Your Honor. Tim McGinney, County Prosecutor.
Thank you.
Yes, both the victim's son and the victim's mother and family do not want their identity known or their pictures taken or their pictures published. It is extremely important to both the son and the mother and father or stepfather or husband, whatever his position is at this point, and other family members. They do not want their identities and lives compromised. It's extremely important to them, and they beg this court that there be an order that their photos and their identity not be published.
All right. Any objection to that on behalf of the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Then the court will order that the motion is granted. The media will not film the witnesses or the victims in this case. And specifically, who are we? We're talking about the mother and the son. Is that it, or is there anyone else that they're concerned about?
Well, if the mother's husband or family member or grandmother are photographed, then obviously the media could, and public could then put it together who actually the mother is and the son is. So we ask that the media not compromise their lives further. They are begging not to become, and attorneys are here for both. Mr. Woolley from Jones Day is here representing the son, and Ms. Allred from Beverly Hills is here from New York, where her office is representing the mother. And they're begging this court to protect them from the media onslaught that they fear that will compromise their lives even and victimize them even more in the future than they've already been victimized.
All right. Then that is the order for the mother, son, grandmother, any witnesses that come up, any of the family of the victims. We will put that order on. So media, please govern yourselves accordingly. Mr. DeFranco, did you have the opportunity to review the pre-sentence investigation report in this case?
I did, Your Honor.
Did you have any corrections to that report?
I do not.
All right, thank you. Previously, on March 14, 2016, the defendant pled guilty to count 1, kidnapping, a felony of the first degree in violation of 2905.0183. That carries a possible sentence from 3 to 11 years in prison and a fine of up to $20,000. The defendant also pled guilty to count 2, kidnapping, a felony of the first degree in violation of 2905.0185. That also carries a possible penalty from 3 to 11 years in prison and a fine of up to $20,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 4, interference with custody, a felony of the 5th degree in violation of 2919.23A1. That carries a possible penalty from 6 to 12 months in prison and a fine of up to $2,500. The defendant pled guilty to count 5, tampering with records, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.42A1. That carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 8, forgery, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.31A3. That carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 9, tampering with records, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.42A1. That carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 12, forgery, a misdemeanor of the 1st degree in violation of 2913.31B1. That carries a possible penalty of up to 6 months of local incarceration and a fine of up to $1,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 14, interference with custody, a felony of the 5th degree in violation of 2919.23A1. That carries a possible penalty from 6 to 12 months in prison and a fine of up to $2,500. The defendant pled guilty to count 15, tampering with records, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.42A1. That carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 17, tampering with records, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.42A1. That carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 23, tampering with records, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.42A1. That carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 25, tampering with records, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.42A1. that carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 27, tampering with records, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.42A1 that carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The defendant pled guilty to count 29, tampering with records, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.42A1 that carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The defendant finally pled guilty to count 31, tampering with records, a felony of the 3rd degree in violation of 2913.42A1 that carries a possible penalty from 9 to 36 months in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. This court has had the opportunity to review the pre-sentence investigation report that was prepared by the Cuyahoga County Adult Probation Department and has made that report available to counsel. Before imposing sentence, this court will consider the record, the PSI, and any written or oral statements made to the court today as is required by Revised Code Section 2929.19B1. Mr. Hernandez, we are here to impose sentence in your case. Before I determine what sentence to impose, I will allow you, your attorney, as well as the state of Ohio to address this court. Before we get started, counsel, is there any reason why we should not go forth at this time?
There's not, Your Honor.
Then you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have had an opportunity to thoroughly review the pre-sentence report and the exhibits connected with this case. I believe they fairly and accurately reflect my client's background and the circumstances surrounding this case. As you have just outlined, he did enter pleas of guilty to the various counts connected with him removing the child from Alabama and establishing them and their identities here to go on with their lives. Since his arrival here in this jurisdiction, his arrest and subsequent indictment, Mr. Hernandez has accepted complete responsibility for his behavior.
Counsel, could you speak up just a little bit? Right.
Sure. He is 53 years. He's 53 years of age. He has resided on the west side of Cleveland with his fiancee Marcy, her children, the child they recently had together, and of course his son Jay, the subject of this investigation. Mr. Hernandez does not have a significant criminal history. Either in Alabama or here, he lived with his family, raised children, was employed on a full-time basis. Throughout the entire time he was here, there have been no contact with law enforcement officers for any reason except the circumstances surrounding this case. The defendant also has a complete family, brothers and sisters in Alabama, who throughout this period of time he also has had no contact with and did learn that both of his parents have died while this situation was pending. He served in the United States Navy from 1979 to 1987, was honorably discharged. Throughout the time the defendant has been here, his son, the child in question, Jay, has lived with him in what has been a very stable environment. Jonathan attends Rhodes High School. He's an honor student and is on course to graduate in June of this year and anticipates moving on to higher education at college or university of his choice. The relationship between Mr. Hernandez and the mother of the child historically was not good. They were not married when this child was conceived. Counsel was advised by my client that there was some suggestion about her not even having this baby. He has told me that from day one. The defendant begged her to have the child and indicated that if they couldn't get along, he would raise the child on his own and do the best that he could do. And I think that the record is clear, despite the fact that the child was deprived of his mother, that Mr. Hernandez has been a model parent, raising his son the entire time they have been here, 13 or 14 years. Mr. Hernandez has worked several jobs along the way to make sure he had sufficient money to provide for his son and his family by way of food, clothing, shelter, and so forth. Counsel, to the report, which I believe you have, Your Honor, attached a multitude of exhibits which reflected the 8 years that Mr. Hernandez honorably served his country in the United States Navy and was honorably discharged. Throughout this entire situation, as indicated, the major downside of this case is the fact that the mother was without access to the child. The defendant has never denied that or sold that short. He totally understands the pain associated with that, but the child did receive all of the necessary parenting that goes along with raising a child. The relationship, as I've indicated, was not good between the mother and the defendant. There were arguments, frequent suggestions, separations, and suggestions, I think even on her part, that the child at some time may have been removed, which created the background and the circumstance for, not necessarily to justify it, but at least to explain the situation. This has not been a situation where, as seen in many cases, there was abuse, neglect, no education, and so forth. That certainly was not the case here. The defendant took complete responsibility of this young man with love, affection, education, and the kind of life that creates the opportunity for him to now attend college and proceed with whatever profession measures up to his qualifications, which are apparently exceptional. His grades have all been A's and B's, and as I indicated, he does plan to further his education. A lot can be said again and again about this tragedy of this situation, with this young man being removed from his mother. However, we ask this honorable court that should be tempered with the conduct on the part of the defendant throughout the last 13 or 14 years and the results that have been obtained. The defendant understands that there are consequences for what took place here, but certainly hopes this honorable court will take into consideration the type of parenting and lifestyle that he has provided for this young man, who is clearly very close to his father. They were having regular contact with each other, but since the arraignment, they have not been allowed to contact each other, which certainly has been painful for both of them. There will be some Mr. Hernandez's fiancée and a couple of neighbors speaking on his behalf very shortly. As I indicated earlier, Your Honor, from day one, the defendant has completely and fully accepted responsibility for his actions. And again, a lot of the conduct emanating from what was considered a bad relationship created this situation. There is no other history of any conduct, misconduct as a parent, as a man or an individual in society. There's no history of violence, drug and alcohol abuse, weapons, or anything of that nature. Simply an individual who worked every day and supported his family. Counsel would respectfully request of this honorable court that, and I know you will, thoroughly review the memorandum, the exhibits submitted. This entire family situation, from what took place in Alabama, what took place here, specifically the defendant's demeanor and acceptance of responsibility, the parenting skills he has exercised with his children, and specifically Jonathan, who I've said frequently is a straight-A student, an athlete, and a candidate to attend college. Counsel certainly would ask this honorable court to consider community control under whatever circumstances you would deem appropriate. I have had a multitude of conduct with Mr. Hernandez. As far as I'm concerned, this is a very kind and gentle man, a good parent, a responsible individual who reacted to some conditions that existed in Alabama and certainly realizes the gravity of his conduct and has shown significant remorse for that. Your Honor, I would ask that you take all these things into consideration as you consider whatever sentence you deem appropriate. Certainly, we would ask for community control, and if that's not an option, for a sentence in the minimum range. I have, with your permission, Mr. Hernandez's fiancée and two neighbors who would like to speak on his behalf, and that he also would have a statement to make to you.
All right, we'll have them speak in just a little bit. I'm now on behalf of the state of Ohio.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach the podium or?
You can speak from here.
Okay, thank you. Judge, there is no greater robbery than a vengeful father stealing an innocent mother's child for 13 years of that child's most formative development in history. Nor is there a more selfish and heartless action to the child than to deprive him of his mother and his family's love. To make matters worse, this defendant has led this child to believe that he had been abandoned by an uncaring mother when the opposite was true. His mother searched, did everything she could, everything in her power with the police and authorities, even hiring private detectives, as did the family, to search for their son and their grandson. The loss of a son and grandson can never be repaired or repaid. But the criminal committing such a cruel and depraved crime must be punished so that others will be deterred. This man purposely stole the mother's most precious asset, her son. He was robbed of his mother and the ability to be nurtured by the mother, the grandmother, to know his siblings, to know his family. And the worst, be led to believe he had been abandoned. The defendant threatened the child and victim's mother here with stealing the son if he would break up with her. The defendant has made some outrageous statements, incredible statements in his pre-sentence, and he blames the mother. He claims an agreement to raise the child. That is totally and completely false and obvious from his subsequent actions. He lived a life of lies for 13 years. If there was some agreement, why would he lie to everyone? Those closest to him, the son, his fiancée now, his employers. Why would he go to such great lengths to get false identity, Social Security, and others? Why would he lie to his work, his neighbors, and lie on a daily basis if there was an agreement for him to raise the son? Why would he never contact his own family? Obviously, it is one gigantic, continuous lie. It shows a total lack of remorse, a total lack of respect, a total and total disappreciation of this court's intelligence that anyone would think that this court or anyone would buy such a horrendous and silly story. And he is a con man, and he has a history of being a con man, Your Honor. He went to such great lengths, for an example, to fool the mother into persuading her into not breaking up with him and not leaving him as she attempted to do. He was abusive, violent, and even went to the length of creating a false history of cancer, that he was dying of cancer, including creating documents to present to her. He went to great lengths in his deceptions. He went to great lengths, which is verified here and corroborated by his great lengths. He went to deceive everyone he knew. He's attempting to deceive this court now with a series of outrageous falsehoods in his pre-sentence report. He's playing us all for saps. This man committed one of the greatest crimes of this sort in history. Now, I've been a prosecutor or a judge for over a third of a century. I have never seen a duplicate crime that equals this in a kidnapping. He kidnapped someone for every single day of 13 years. He lied to everyone every single day of 13 years, all to deprive this family of their grandson and son, brother, cousin, and all that a family brings for his own selfish needs. This calls for a very significant and long prison sentence to deter him and to deter others who themselves would consider such a cruel and depraved act in the future. It is an important sentence this court's going to impose. Prosecutor Maggie Troya will introduce, if the court would permit, the lawyers for both the son and the mother. Yes. And I believe we'll have a summary regarding the lengthy letter from one relative and another letter.
Okay.
You allow.
If the attorneys, you want to have them to come up now, you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then I'm happy to move your client to the side.
Your Honor, first on behalf of the state of Ohio, we have the victim's son in this case, as well as his attorney, Mr. Jim Woolley, who would like to address the court at this time.
Sure.
The son is not actually, the victim is not actually in the courtroom. His fear of the media is one of the issues.
He's here. Come on. Remember, media, you are not allowed to show the victim here.
I apologize.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
How are you?
State your name for the record.
My name is Jim Woolley. We represent Jonathan. I can assure the court we've spent a lot of time with him. He's a fine young man.
I want you to introduce the other counsels.
Sure. That's my associate, Ryan Durango. And Jonathan cares very deeply about the outcome of these proceedings. It's a very challenging moment for him. He's put some thought into something he'd like to, a statement he'd like to make to the court.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Yeah, no.
I don't know what else to say other than not to send my father to jail, because even though everyone wants to talk about all the bad things he's done and doesn't think it's possible to forgive somebody for something like this, I think that he's done a lot of good in our time here in Cleveland. He's raised me well, in my opinion, a lot better than any other parents I've seen. He's pushed me far in school, and he's the reason why I get some of the best grades in school and why I'm going to college. He loved me and protected me more than anybody else I've ever known in my life, and whenever I needed something, he would make it happen. Whenever I had a problem, he would listen. When other kids were on drugs and smoking and drinking, just because of him, I never fell into any of that, even when I had numerous opportunities to. He took good care of me and my little sister and our family here. And even the kids that, weren't even his, he still cared about them and made sure that they were doing the right thing. And the time I spent with him is the only time I've ever truly felt at home and at peace because of how much hard work he put into everything. My family here needs him more than anything else, and I can't imagine going on in my life without his support. Even if other people can't, I forgive him for what he's done, and I love him, and I want him to be a part of my life, and I want him to be a part of my baby sister's life. And yes, growing up without my mother was painful at times, but taking my father away from me now just increases the pain from that. And taking him from me now is just doing the same thing all over again to me. And it's damaging my family, and we just need him, and I don't know what else to say other than not to send my father to jail.
Where did you think your mother was during these years?
I knew that she lived somewhere else and that I had never seen her.
I mean, were you told that how was it explained to you why your mother wasn't there?
That they had broken up, and I never questioned it any further because I didn't really care. My father was there, and he was all I ever needed.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No.
All right, thank you very much. Counsel, anything you want to add?
Your Honor, I just didn't, we're going to leave the courtroom now. He would prefer to watch this from a remote proceedings, but I want to assure the court that's not a sign of disinterest in the outcome of these proceedings. He's very much interested in that. But thank you very much for your time, Your Honor.
Thank you both. Thank you. Counselor, who else?
Thank you, Your Honor. We also have letters that concerned family members have submitted for this court to consider for its sentence. We have one letter which I will mark as Exhibit 1, which is a letter from the victim's grandfather.
Okay.
And basically it just outlines the torture, the grief, the depression, the stress that this family had to undergo for 13 years while they went to various states searching for Jonathan, while not a day went by, not a holiday went by, not a birthday went by, when this family didn't wonder, where is Jonathan, is he okay, will we ever see him again, and what has happened to him.
Did you want to read it? How long is it?
It's a lengthy letter, Your Honor. I'll just read select a few portions
that's fine.
To read, and then I can provide the entire letter to the court.
Thank you.
The grandfather lays out the phone call when the mother of the victim called him hysterically, stating in August of 2002 that her son was gone and that we will never see him again. He talks about how that day forward, his life, his wife's life, his whole family's life was literally consumed. Every minute, every day, every breath, every bit of energy with the sole obsession of finding their son and grandson. He talks about how the family's life was spent on computers, searching any lead possible, contacting law enforcement, FBI, congressmen, traveling to 4 states, tracking down any possible lead the family had. He talks about, as the years passed, that their pain, frustration, sense of loss, grief, disappointment, depression, and blame increased and was crushing. He talks about not only the stress that this had on them, that their grandson or son was missing, but the stress and the problems that caused within the family dealing with this horrific event.
I'm sorry, you keep saying grandson and son.
I'm sorry, it was his grandson, Your Honor, and his daughter's son. And he basically just goes on, as I've stated earlier, that the constant reminder that this family had in search for their loved one. He does lay out that he wishes that the defendant does receive a prison sentence in this case to account for the constant pain, sufferings, and damages that the defendant has caused to their family. We also have the letter which Mr. Schnatter will summarize, written by a family friend.
Before you sit down, in the letter from the grandfather, does he talk about, did they know who had the child?
The family always believed that he was in the possession of the defendant, but they didn't know where he was, his well-being, or if they would ever see the child again. And I'll submit the entire letter to the court.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Your Honor, the next letter is from Amy Coker, C-O-K-U-R, who is
Say that again, I didn't hear it.
C-O-O-K. I'm sorry, Your Honor, Trevor Schnatter on behalf of the state of Ohio.
Okay.
The letter is from Amy Coker, C-O-K-E-R. She was a childhood friend of the mother in this case, and she was also a friend throughout the years when Jonathan was living with Mom. She was privileged witness to the relationship. She describes The mother is, in her words, the most amazing mother a child can ask for. The kind of mother who always knows what the child is wearing, his favorite stuffed toy. She was working, putting herself through school, maintaining great grades, but all of that remained focused on his care. She goes on to describe the devastation that mom went through at the loss of her child, not knowing whether her child's alive, where he is, his well-being.
Do you have a copy of that letter?
I do, Your Honor. I will certainly provide a copy to the court.
Well, then if you want to, how long is this letter referring to?
It's about 2 pages, maybe 6 paragraphs. I can read it for you if you like.
Go ahead.
I have known Julian's mother since we were 6 years old and in the same first grade class. On August 28, 2002, Julian's mother went to pick him up from preschool to find that the defendant had never dropped him off that morning. Her worst fears were realized when she came home to find the note that the defendant left. I was the first person that she called after calling the police, and I was there with her throughout the whole horrible ordeal. Therefore, I feel that I am as qualified as anyone, other than Julian's mother, to speak to the impact of the defendant's actions upon him. Julian and those who knew and loved him then, Julian's mother is of course best suited to speak to the impact of Julian's kidnapping on her life. So I would like to draw the court's attention to the deep and far-reaching impact of the actions of the defendant upon Julian, which will likely take years and intensive therapy for him to fully realize due to the extraordinary cruel nature of this crime. When the defendant kidnapped Julian, he not only shattered his mother's life, he also deprived Julian of growing up with the most caring and loving mother a child could ever hope for. Despite the young age at which she had him, or perhaps because of it, she was and is the most amazing mom I've ever known. She worked unbelievably hard attending college classes before work and on the weekends, while working full-time to put herself through school and maintain an excellent grade point average. She financially supported herself, Julian, and often the much older defendant in an effort to make a better life for all of them. Julian's mother put him in the best preschool she could find and was the only one of his parents going to conferences, working lessons with him, and tucking him into bed every night. From the moment he was born, his mother built her whole world around being the most amazing mother that she could be, and she had an almost superhuman drive to do so. Julian's mother was and is the kind of mother who knew exactly what he was wearing and which of his many favorite stuffed animals that he was carrying the last time that she saw him. The stuffed orca whale listed on all of Julian's missing clothes. She was and is the kind of mother who packed his school lunches every day and cried out of guilt because she thought she should have known better when one of his teachers told her that he didn't usually eat his yogurt. Watching Julian's mother spend every waking moment putting every ounce of herself into making a better life for them made me, another young mother, better as a person than the mother. I would never have found my chosen career or achieved the academic and professional success that I have enjoyed without her influence. Julian may not yet realize it, but his current success, despite incomprehensible circumstances, mirrored his mother perfectly. His intelligence, tenacity, and work ethic are very obvious and inherited from his mother, and should in no way be credited to his kidnapper. I have never seen a little boy more in love with his mom than Julian was. They were inseparable. Julian was always smiling, and his smile, with laughing eyes just like his mother's, and one dimple was infectious. Imagine how cold and dark the days, months, and years after he was taken must have been for Julian is beyond heartbreaking. As long as I live, I will never understand how that monster could have looked at Julian's sweet face and told him that he would never see his mother, family, or friends, or even go by his real name again. Instead of spending his time and energy working, or being able to hold a job for more than a few months. going to school or trying to better himself or his family, the defendant planned a kidnapping and got away with it for so many years because he had previously kidnapped another one of his children. He stole Julian's childhood and his innocence and robbed everyone close to them of any sense of justice, and there is no amount of time that can ever make up for it. It will likely take many years, intensive therapy, and incomprehensible pain for Julian to separate truth from the lies, manipulation, and alienation, and be able to truly see his mother. His entire life has been built upon lies that Julian cannot possibly grasp. Who and what were stolen from him is probably one of the saddest aspects of this tragedy. The defendant stole innocence and trust from everyone close to Julian and his mother. It pales, of course, in comparison to what was taken from them, but the impact of this crime will be felt forever and is far-reaching. My most basic sense of security, my identity as a parent, and my children's lives, especially that of my eldest, who were Julian's friend, have been fundamentally shaped by the crime of the defendant. The fact that Julian's mother has lived in fear of the defendant since she was 19 years old is reprehensible, and freedom from continuing to live in fear of him for as long as possible is the very least of what she deserves. The only way to ensure her freedom from that fear is for the defendant to be sentenced to the maximum allowable sentence. The only way for Julian to have freedom or peace from the defendant's poison, manipulation, and alienation is to put as much distance between them for as long as possible. If the defendant was capable of giving Julian a tiny fraction of the love that he deserves, or even basic human empathy, he would realize this. For the past 12 years, I, along with everyone who loves Julian and his mother, have grieved deeply for what was taken. Today, I am asking the court to deliver the maximum allowable sentence to the defendant and allow everyone affected by his crimes to finally begin the long, hard process of picking up the pieces of the lives that were shattered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. We last have Gloria Allred, A-L-L-R-E-D, who will address the court and speak on behalf of the victim's mother and the victim's grandmother.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Yes, good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Gloria Allred, Rockland Goldberg, on behalf of the mother, the victim in this case, and also the maternal grandmother has also asked me to read her statement, if the court would permit.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is the statement on behalf of the mother. I am Julian Hernandez's mother. I have lived in Birmingham, Alabama for most of my life. I was a young mother, and Julian was the center of my life. As a baby, Julian had such a sweet smile, big chubby cheeks, and a big laugh. As he got older, he loved to build with blocks and to sing along in the car to his favorite songs, especially American Pie. Every night he wanted to read at least 3 bedtime stories. He always seemed to be smiling and laughing. Julian went to a wonderful preschool, and I was a college student. We had a happy life together. Our lives were changed forever on August 28, 2002, when I lost my sweet little boy. It was the worst day of my life. I was shocked and panicked. Every parent's worst nightmare is having to describe to the police what their child was wearing the last time that they were seen. I didn't know if he was gone forever. As the sun went down that night and it started to get dark, I wondered about him. Where was he? Was he afraid? The next days were terrifying. I was desperately trying to find my baby. For weeks, my best friend and I drove late into the night up and down the interstate surrounding Birmingham, stopping at gas stations and rest stops to post flyers that we had printed ourselves at Kinko's. With every passing hour, it became clear that Julian was not coming home. As the weeks went by, I felt completely and utterly alone, as if I had no help and no hope in finding my child. I stopped sleeping and eating. For months I stayed on a friend's couch because I couldn't bear to be in the apartment that we had shared. I left school to continue searching. As the weeks became months and Julian didn't come home, I was constantly panicked and worried. Living with the grinding stress was agonizing. I had terrible moments when I had an overwhelming feeling that he was not okay. All I could do during those moments was pray. I began to feel that I could not go on without my little boy. During my darkest moments, I considered suicide. I wanted to die. I understand now that only God got me through. Along with my own devastation from losing my son, I worried about what my son was going through. I didn't know if he had a home or whether he was being taken care of. I wondered what happened if he fell and skinned his knee, if he had a bad dream during the night, or if he was going to school. His belongings were left behind. His toys, his clothes, his books, puzzles, crayons, and Legos. I left his bedroom untouched for years, hoping that he would come home. I never stopped looking for Julian. Leads would come and go, only to leave me destroyed again and again. The worst occurred in 2003, when I received a call from a missing children's agency stating that Julian had been found in Pensacola, Florida, and that he was crying for me. I immediately called all of my family and friends to tell them the news and started to pack to get him. The agency had not verified the report with the local police. As I was driving to get my baby, they called to tell me that it wasn't true. Someone had called in a false report. Time never healed the experience of losing my son. Words could never describe the crater that this left in my life. Even now, I'm not able to talk openly about losing him. Julian's abduction also affected the lives of my family and friends. Julian and his grandmother were so close, and her life was shattered when he was lost. I'm married now, and my husband and I have a little boy. I can never let him play in the yard alone. The abduction is the reason I keep my doors locked in the middle of the day. It's because of this that I have lived in fear for years. Although I'm so proud that Julian has grown up to be a wonderful young man, we will never get back the 13 years that were stolen from us. I wasn't able to be there with him for his first day of first grade. I wasn't able to be with him when he turned 10 or when he turned 16. Every Christmas brought pain and heartache. Despite this, going forward, my focus will be on supporting Julian and helping him to mend his life and find his way. I love my son very much, and he deserves every chance for happiness in a normal life. Sadly, family abductions are common. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, more than 200,000 children become victims of family abduction each year. My hope and prayer is that the next parent who experiences this horror doesn't have to go through the hell that I have gone through. I hope that our case brings awareness to law enforcement, the public, and the courts that the crime of family abduction tears families apart and destroys lives. That is her statement. And now, Your Honor, I would like to read a statement of Julian's grandmother. My name is Susan Lahan. In August of 2002, I experienced the very worst day of my life. My daughter called and said that Julian had been kidnapped by Bobby Hernandez. At that time, a huge rush of fear and shock went through me. and I was almost incapacitated. Julian called me Nana, and he was my little pumpkin. I immediately started contacting car dealerships to see if he attempted to trade the white Chevy Silverado truck that he was driving, but I had no luck. My daughter's father flew to Birmingham to be with her. My daughter was completely and totally devastated and distraught. Her father said that there was a lead in Key West, Florida. I left work and drove to Key West. I had called ahead and spoke with Detective Bernardo Barrios and explained the situation and that there was an address I needed to check out. When I met with Detective Barrios, he explained that there was an open case there of a female kidnapping by Bobby Hernandez of his daughter, and no resolution had been listed in NCIC. Detective Barrios had a laptop on his desk and he was able to view it. He said he had checked out the bars and restaurants in the area, as well as the address, and Bobby was not employed there nor living there. When Julian was born, apparently Bobby Hernandez told a nurse that he had 2 other children with another woman. I started doing some research and found 2 children for whom Bobby was wanted for not having paid child support. He just abandoned them. Those children are now adults. At some point, I did speak with the mother of these 2 children. She explained that their father had never had any assets or job to pay child support, and she did not want to pursue it. All 3 of these events, Bobby Hernandez abandoning 2 children and failure to pay child support, kidnapping a female baby, his daughter, and Julian's kidnapping, are not the signs of a good father. At some point, Julian, who was 5 at the time, had to experience a huge trauma. He was used to his mother fixing his dinner, playing with him, reading him a story, and tucking him in bed every night. And then his mother was just gone, and he was not at the home that he knew. A good father does not do that to his son. As time went on, the pain did not ease for me, or for my daughter or my husband. There was not a day I did not look for Julian. I followed up on every lead that I could find and would contact Operation Lookout or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I made several trips to check out addresses where I thought that they might be. The one after Key West was in Orlando. The next 2 trips I went to North Carolina. Each time, I would meet with the local police or sheriff's department to explain what I needed to know. Each time was a failure. I also contacted Interpol. Julian was on the database of children who might be in Puerto Rico. It had never occurred to me that Bobby Hernandez would steal the identity of someone else and change Julian's identity. There is a year difference in his actual birthday and the one that Bobby made up for him. This is not what a good father does. Every Christmas, Julian's birthday, every year, on the date that he was kidnapped, we can only think that this will be the last year of this terrible headache and heartache. Surely he will be found. Every Christmas, I bought Julian an ornament so that when he was found, he would know that I was thinking of him all that time. For 13 years, my family and I have experienced a tremendous amount of pain and suffering, all brought by the hands of Bobby Hernandez. For 13 years, my heart has ached for my daughter. She went through a tremendous amount of trauma when Julian was kidnapped. Not only was I suffering from the loss of Julian, but also suffering for the pain that my daughter was experiencing. For 13 years, we did not know if Julian was alive or deceased. Bobby Hernandez did not kidnap Julian out of any fear for Julian's safety. He did it because he's an angry, controlling, and vengeful person. Julian had a wonderful life prior to his kidnapping. He was a happy, healthy 5-year-old. Bobby Hernandez kidnapped him because he wanted to get even with Julian's mother for leaving him. This is not a sign of a good father. I would beg the court to give a sentence that is as long as our suffering has been. We need time as a family to work together to get Julian where he wants to be, a successful and well-educated adult. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Before you go, did the mother have any requests as far as sentencing?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Your Honor, the mother trusts the judgment of the court on this matter. Thank you very much.
All right, we have the state of Ohio. Anything else?
Your Honor, we'd just like to sum up by thanking the guidance counselor from the high school and the FBI for their work in tracking this and cracking this case. Special Agent Mike Kirchian and Victim Specialist Jennifer Myers. They do not wish to make a statement, but we just wish to thank them for their outstanding work in this case. And the Lieutenant Evans and the police in Vestavia Hills, Alabama, who initially investigated this case and never gave up on the case. Continually re-upped and reopened their cases and constantly dealt with the family and aided them. So we thank them and we thank the FBI especially. Thank you.
Thank you. Counsel, please bring your client back. At this time, Mr. DeFranco, you can decide whether you want your client to speak first or those who wish to speak on his behalf.
Those who wish to speak on his behalf, if it's all right with you. All right. Mark?
And I'll have to go back over there.
Marcy? Would you state your name for the court? This is Mr. Hernandez's fiancée,
Okay, would you please state your
Marcy
name?
Bigway.
Marcelina Biglang Awa.
Keep your voice up.
Marcelina Biglang Awa.
And then you speak into the mic. And what would you like me to, would you spell your last name?
BIGLANG-AWA.
What would you like the court to know?
Your Honor, my name is Marcelina Biglang Awa. I am Bobby Hernandez's fiancée and mother to our 3-year-old daughter. I am here to speak on his behalf to ask for compassion and leniency in his sentencing day. I know Bobby that his father was a Vietnam veteran. Bobby was born and grew up in a military base. They were stationed in places. I know him to be a good father because Julian gets 4.0 GPA grades in school. And he's also an industrious, hardworking family man. He has served in the U.S. Navy for over 8 years and worked very hard in his job. When Bobby and I started dating, I saw how much he adored Julian. I also realized that his position on education was that it came first in all daily activities. And college was Julian's ultimate goal. We got engaged and Bobby asked me and my 3 children to move in with him and Julian. We split responsibilities at home such as after-school activities, homework, and bedtime enforcement. Bobby treated all the kids like his very own. He set them goals for school the same as Julian's. He also had my kids join karate at the same dojo Julian had been going to since he was in 2nd grade. It was 4 times a week we were there at that dojo. He wants them all to have strong minds and bodies. Bobby is a very kind man with a big heart, generous and loving. I am aware of the events regarding Bobby Hernandez's guilty plea. I understand it is against the law. I truly believe that Bobby has already suffered extensively for his actions. He has lost credibility in the public, and I believe he is truly saddened regarding what he has put our family, or his family, especially his late parents and 2 of his siblings, who were sick and had passed away, and not being able to be there and attend their funerals. Also, his other children, who he is missed, and not being able to meet his grandchildren. Because of the significant difficulties that will be faced by our family, who ourselves were blameless in this crime, Your Honor, I would ask that you please consider giving Bobby at least the lowest possible sentence. He is not a criminal. He has always worked really hard to help and keep our family, neighbors, friends, and our country safe. I believe he will not violate the law again, that he has learned from this. Hope for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna? This is a neighbor, Your Honor, Anna Haruvas. Could you give her your name and speak up?
My name is Anna Haruvas, and
Please go to the last.
Harouvis.
What would you like me to know?
I have the cafe that's across the street from where they lived, and though I do not condone a lot of the things I hear today, it's shocking for everybody and upsetting. From what I've known him for a year. My place was right across the street, so I would see them daily. He was always very kind. There was a lot of problems that occurred in my cafe, things I couldn't afford to fix. He would always come over. He would never ever let me pay him. He was always very, brought over his children to try, some fresh cold pressed juices and healthy food. The person I knew was very nice and very kind. His son, Julian, was so lovely. One of the nicest young men I've ever met in my life. And every day I would just see this group of love and family, and it's just shocking and sad. And I think for me, I guess my heart just breaks for Julian all the time, whatever is best for him and the court sees and all the problems he's had. He's such a good guy, and he's such a good kid, and he just deserves to have the best future. And the love I've seen with him and his father for whatever the past, over the time I knew them, was very special. Thank you.
Guy Singer? Also a neighbor, Your Honor. Give her your name and spell it.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Guy Singer,
Say your last name.
Singer.
All right.
I just wanted to speak briefly on Bobby Hernandez's behalf. I've known him for about 3 years or so, and I own the house immediately north of him, and I had the opportunity to work on some projects with both Bobby and Julian. We shared a common property line, and we spent the last summer completely tearing down an old chain link fence and removing trees and putting up a new fence, and I worked on that project both with Bobby and Julian. And my observation, I can only speak of my observation, and Bobby was always a very loving father to Julian. He was would always be nurturing, and Julian was the most important thing to Bobby. He really didn't care about much of anything else. He wanted to make sure that he did his homework, that he did his chores, that he always got him to his karate classes on time. Those were the most important things to him. And again, those are just the observations that I had. And I just ask that you weight Julian's wishes heavily in the sentencing. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez would like to address the court.
Mr. Hernandez, you may proceed.
I accept full responsibility for everything I did. Julian was always the most important person in my life, too. Julian was always the most important thing to me also. Some of the things that have been said about me, it's not true. I offer my apologies to my son and to his mother and her family. I didn't do this like they said.
What else do you want me to know?
I believe that's what Your Honor.
consideration of the record and the oral statements made, looking at the pre-sentence investigation report and the purposes and principles of sentencing under Ohio Revised Code, Section 2929.11, the seriousness and recidivism factors relevant to the offense and offender pursuant to Revised Code, Section 2929.12, and the need for deterrent, incapacitation, rehabilitation, restitution. This case is a mother's nightmare, no question about it. On behalf of the defense, they're asking this court for probation. On behalf of the state, they're asking for the max. I don't believe that the facts of this case warrant either the max or probation, somewhere in between. There are some issues that I had with this case. According to the police report that was filed back in 2002, it indicated that the mother had left the child, had asked the defendant to come over and babysit. And when she got back, there was a note that indicated that they were going fishing. However, when she looked around the house, she noticed that his clothes were all gone and his toys were missing. And that is when she called in a missing persons report. I say that because in looking at or reading the mother's statement, I was a little confused because in her statement she indicated that his clothes and things were still there and that she really didn't know, what was going on or whether he would be back or when he would be back. And I think all along she knew who had the child. All along, this was a person who she had trusted with the child. I don't know why Mr. Hernandez decided to take the child. I don't know. And I think only he knows that, and maybe the mother may know something about that, but we certainly don't know it here. And certainly, whatever reason he had, it certainly is not a valid reason to take a child from his mother. I'm also a little confused or concerned of why there was never a warrant issued for his arrest down in Alabama. There wasn't a warrant. And it also indicates that he took the child about 10 days before there was to be a custody hearing. And at that custody hearing, in his absence, the court awarded custody to the mother. So at the time of the abduction, no one, neither parent, had custody. But again, this is a horrible thing to do to a mother and to another parent. And I'm sure, I don't know why you did it, but I'm sure that over time you probably wish you hadn't done it because you had stepped over a line that you really could not come back from. The court is very, very mindful of the statements and the witnesses who spoke today, but I'm most mindful of the child's statement and how he's done. Over the past 13 years, he's done very well. Says he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he is into athletics, and he is an honor student. This whole thing came to light when the son was talking to a guidance counselor and was talking about going to college. And according to the reports that I have, he actually said to him, well, I don't know what I'm going to do because, you know, I've been kidnapped. You know, I'm from Alabama and I'm not who I say I am. And that sort of begins the ball rolling and how we get here. But he stands today and he says, don't send my father to prison. The mother of the child today has no opinion on whether this person goes to prison or not. The grandparents, of course, talk about the agony that they went through in losing a grandchild. And as a grandmother, I understand that. And they wish for him to have at least the 13 years that they had suffering, that he be sent to prison for those amount of years, or the maximum amount of time that he could go. Mr. Hernandez has taken full responsibility because, again, you stepped over the line that you can't step back from. So this is a big deal because of what happened and the impact that it had not only on yourself and the child, but the impact that it had on the mother, the grandparents, her friend who wrote a letter and talked about how she suffered along with her best friend. But with that being said, the court finds that a prison term is consistent with the purposes and principles of sentencing set forth in Section 2929.11 of the Revised Code, and finds that the offender is not amenable to an available community control sanction. Furthermore, this court has considered the factors set forth in Section 2929.12 and finds that a prison term is commensurate with the seriousness of the defendant's conduct and its impact on the victims, that is reasonably necessary to deter the offender in order to protect the public from future crimes, and would not place unnecessary burden on government resources. With that being said, the sentencing is as follows. As to count 1, 4 years. As to count 2, 4 years. As to count 4, 1 year. As to count 5, 3 years. As to count 8, 3 years. As to count 9, 3 years. As to count 12, 6 months of local incarceration. As to count 14, 1 year. As to count 15, 3 years. As to count 17, 3 years. As to count 23, 3 years. As to count 25, 3 years. As to count 27, 3 years. As to count 29, 3 years. As to count 31, 3 years. That time will be served concurrent for a total time of 4 years in prison. The court is in receipt of the defendant's motion or their affidavit of indigency. The court finds the defendant to be indigent, court costs and all fines are waived. Upon your release from prison, the State of Ohio Adult Parole Authority and not this court shall have a mandatory 5-year supervision under what is called post-release control. If you fail to meet the terms and conditions of any post-release control supervision imposed upon you, then the Adult Parole Authority can modify and or extend your supervision and make it more restrictive. They can incarcerate you for up to half of the original sentence imposed by this court. They can charge you with a new offense called escape, another felony where you could face additional prison time. And if you commit a new crime while on post-release control, you can face the maximum penalty under the law for the new crime committed. The no contact order on this matter is released. You can have contact with your son while you are in prison. Unless you are serving a prison term that cannot be reduced under the law, defendant may be eligible to earn 1 or 5 days credit towards his sentence for each completed month during which the defendant participates in educational or other programs. In addition, the defendant may earn up to 5 days credit towards his sentence for successful completion of a second such program. This earned credit is not automatic, but must be earned by the defendant. Mr. Hernandez, you have the right to appeal this sentence within 30 days of the entry of the court's sentencing decision, and you have the right to have a notice of appeal timely filed on your behalf. If you are unable to pay the cost of an appeal, you have the right to an appeal without payment. If you are unable to afford counsel for an appeal, counsel will be appointed for you without cost. If you are unable to pay the cost of documents necessary to effect an appeal, those documents will be provided to you without cost. Do you understand everything that I've said to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any questions you'd ask the court at this time?
No, ma'am.
Anything further on behalf of the state of Ohio?
Nothing further.
Anything further on behalf of the defense?
Credit for time served, Your Honor.
Defendant is ordered to custody of the sheriff or transferred to the appropriate correctional facility. Credit will be given for all time served in case number 600810. Thank you. Good luck to you, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you.
Mark, can you go get Roselle? Or, yeah.